got really frustrated that you were not giving a very nuanced take on it, and you were actually kind of poisoning the online dialogue about it. And it wasn't just you, but I guess I took it worse because it was like, dang, Destiny's... Hey.
Oh, hey, what's up, buddy? Okay, I don't think there's going to be a super long or in-depth convo because I haven't actually done my super big reading yet. That was supposed to be today. I've been getting distracted by people, but I heard apparently you have some things you disagree on, so you can let me know now, and then we can kind of see how much I'm even capable of talking about, and then we can kind of move from there. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, well, first of all, I respect you as a commentator, and I just want to get that out of the way. Like, of all the political streamers, it seems like you tend to be like on the ball more than not. So, and no, obviously we're never going to agree entirely on everything, but we tend to agree on a lot. We found that out the last time we chatted. So, but when you tweeted a bunch of things on the Israeli Hamas conflict,
yeah.
It just got really frustrated that you were not giving a very nuanced take on it, and you were actually kind of poisoning the online dialogue about it. And it wasn't just you, but I guess I took it worse because it was like, dang, Destiny's doing this crap too. Because, as somebody who studies history all the time, I feel like a lot of people just choose to ignore history, especially when it comes to current events. They just pretend like, oh, it's everything happens in a vacuum, and so that's what I was frustrated with. And I haven't, I'll be honest, I haven't seen all of your tweets on it, but I did, I saw you post memes. There's like, man, come on.
Definitely did some memes, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how memes are. I get it. But then some of your viewers started attacking me because I was being critical of you. But I think the main thing is just this is a long, complicated history, and I do understand that the optics of oh, Hamas commits these atrocities toward Israeli civilians, innocent people. It's horrific, and then all of a sudden you have all these protesters defending Palestine. That was not good optics immediately following that, because there's a proper way to do things if you really want to get your message out there.
Sure. Also, I would push back on that. I thought the optics were perfectly fine. I think they conveyed exactly what they wanted to convey. I don't think there were good faith people that were just in the interest of helping Palestinians doing that pro-Palestinian protest the day of or the day after, a huge attack in Israel. I think the message was pretty clear, and I think it was received, pretty concisely, I would say. But
okay, well, there was a lot of conflation between Hamas and Palestine, and I think another thing that why I might be a little biased. Obviously, I have friends that live in Israel, but I also have friends who have relatives who were part of the Nakba, who were forcibly removed from their homes in the late 1940s. And to them, those memories of when they were a kid, my friend's dad was one of them. He was just maybe 7 years old when this happened to him. And I had long conversations with him about it, and he remembers it as if it was yesterday. And when we just think of, you just cannot ignore this history. And I guess, yeah, I'm biased as all these just instant reactions. It's okay, revenge, I feel like they're also, it's leading to more, it's not helping. I think it's better to be humble, especially us in the West. We don't really know what the heck we're talking about, most of us. We don't. And your viewers, when it comes to the Arab-Israeli conflict. And I think it's better just to show humility on this issue, because it is so divisive, and it is something that could spiral out of control. We've seen it with with Iran. If Iran does decide to, get involved more, holy crap! This is a big freaking deal. When we don't want to be hyperbolic, But at the same time, when we talk about World War III, a hypothetical World War III, it often begins with Israel and Palestinian relations. And so I guess that was where my frustration was. It's like, Palestinians most Palestinians are not Hamas. That was my main point, that I thought you were not conveying that message to me. That was my frustration. So what do you think? Sorry, you let me talk a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. I agree that most Palestinians aren't Hamas, but both sides have been playing very fast and loose with that definition. I don't know if you saw one of my tweets, but somebody got upset about, I think there was a meme that I tweeted comparing, I think it was like the Palestinian flag to the Nazi one, which should have been a Hamas flag. I just wrote this for myself, but it should have been a Hamas flag.
Oh, but, yeah, see, that was one of the ones where you like triggered me on
sure,
that.
Yeah, which is kind of fair. However, a lot of the people protesting and a lot of the people representing the pro-Palestinian side play very fast and loose sometimes with both Hamas and Palestinians. Like, they'll talk out of both sides of their mouth sometimes on it. I agree that they're kind of separate people, although that's really hard to say for the Gaza Strip. I don't know if that's true for Gaza. But it's definitely true when distinguishing like those that live in the West Bank between those that live in Gaza. But sure, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't know how relevant that is necessarily to the entire conversation. I guess it depends on the point that somebody's trying to put forth. But
well, a big thing is that it's like, to me, it's the equivalent of like saying everyone in Gaza Strip is on board with Hamas is like the equivalent of saying everybody in the United States is on board with the American military. You know, like the United States notoriously in recent years has been pretty bad about drone warfare. In terms of killing civilians, about 90% of targets, as it turns out, have been civilians, and that's just what we know about. And so many people around the world view the United States military as terrorists.
Sure, hold on. I understand that. I reject the comparison, though. I'd be way more willing to accept that the U.S. public support of American military if this was happening in much closer quarters with people on our borders. I think this isn't to excuse maybe the public's lack of care about drone warfare or whatever, but like, it's a lot different when this is happening 10,000 miles away from you versus when it's literally right on your border. I think that if, for instance, if the United States was engaged constantly in drone warfare with Canada or with Mexico, I think we would have very strong opinions about it, like incredibly strong opinions about it. And if it did continue, I do think that there would be a reckoning that the American public would have, that you'd be able to hold them responsible. Like, you're literally bombing your people, like other people right on the borders of your country. You should be very aware of this. Again, to be clear, not to excuse it happening if it's farther away from you, but I do think the feeling is quite different.
Yeah, that's fair. My larger point, though, is being that we conflate all people living in the Gaza Strip with Hamas, who took control essentially, like they say, by democracy, but there was I don't know if it was that democratic at all when they did take control. And there are a lot of people in Gaza who do not like Hamas, who are not part of Hamas. But at the same time, it's like,
is that true? Because I thought my understanding is Hamas has enjoyed pretty widespread support in Gaza since 2006. Like, have there been like attempted revolutions or attempted coups or people trying to overthrow the Gazan government or?
Well, they can't. It's similar to like North Korea or something. It's like they control it. If there's one group in control that's authoritarian, and you just kind of want to live your life, day-to-day stuff, you know, clean drinking water if you can, you're not really you're just kind of gonna go with it. It's more important to like survive, and that's often, I mean, like the last 20 years, that's all it's been in the Gaza Strip is survival. And it's such a dramatically different world than the West Bank too now, because the West Bank it's almost like they don't have much in common when you look at like the last 20 years, because you basically have 2 million people that live there.
Yeah, now it's about 2 million. Yes.
And you basically just you have a situation where they're just so desperate that it's hard for me not to empathize with that. I don't empathize with terrorism, obviously. But you have to you can't just automatically downplay where they're coming from, because if we want to truly end the cycle of violence, we have to understand what what causes extremism. It doesn't happen out of thin air. It's the same thing, even with 9/11. There were like the people that said, well, why did Al Qaeda really attack the United States? The people that shouted the loudest about that in 2001 were they were ridiculed widely. They were like, how dare you? You know, who cares? Let's just bomb the crap out of the Middle East. But I think it's important to pause and reflect because the cycle will continue and inevitably unless and that's also why, like, as every history teacher predicted the Israeli response, which was going to be, and to your credit, like, I think you're right that Israel is definitely much better about trying to reduce civilian casualties, no doubt about it. But at the same time, like,
can you give me 10 seconds? I gotta fix the microphone real quick. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, go ahead. Check the chat.
Wait, is it working?
I didn't expect to be on here today, so this is exciting. You just get some, a lot of you guys are. Why am I here? Well, I mean, like, who is this nerd? Yeah. Hey, I'm not a nerd anymore. Okay. Yeah, if you don't know who I am, I'm a former history. Well, I still teach history online, but I was a classroom history teacher for 12 years, and now I just teach history on YouTube mostly. So a lot of our audience are the same, though. Supreme Court briefs. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Destiny's audiences and mine definitely overlaps. So a lot of you are like, why don't you go on his stream? Your history is whack. Hey, am I a soy or Giga Chad? Come on, get it straight. I love how that. Top 5 presidents. Well, still, I'm a big fan of George Washington. He's still probably my number 1. But my number 2 surprises people. That's Dwight Eisenhower. I think Dwight Eisenhower was an amazing president. I don't just say that because I'm from Kansas, but and then it changes after that. But I'm still a big fan of Calvin Coolidge, Grover Cleveland, Theodore Roosevelt. Those are usually my top 5. Oh, Truman's one of my favorite as well. Favorite empire? Oh, obviously it's the Ottoman Empire. Come on now. Thoughts on Biden? I think I get that question a lot, but I think overall he's been surprisingly good. I did not anticipate that. I think he's tried to balance a lot of his within his party, like trying to make the most happy as possible. I think the Inflation Reduction Act, while not perfect, had some waste in it. Overall, was really good for American society. I think we're going to not see the benefits of it truly for another 2 or 3 years. Lincoln is still in my top 10. Yeah, Lincoln is. I mean, how can you not say Lincoln was one of the best presidents of all time? I think anyone who says otherwise doesn't really understand American history. Favorite History Channel show? Do they even have history shows anymore? I don't know. Obama. There we go. Yeah, he said that's more than 10 seconds. He just left me all with you. Okay. Do I lift? Yeah, I do lift. It's a good stress reliever. Ice Road Truckers, that actually was a good show. Favorite country in Westeros? I mean, I would have been somebody from the north for sure. You know, I probably would have been with the wildlings. You know. Show us the guns. There you go. I know he left. He's changed his backup. Got a saxophone back there. Does he play saxophone? I didn't even know that. And then, sure the.
Oh Jesus. Okay, sorry. Gaza and the Palestinians aren't necessarily the same. Okay. My understanding is the election that happened in 2006 was pretty legitimate, but maybe you disagree. But
yeah, we don't know. Maybe it was. I shouldn't speculate too much on that. But my main point was like, I guess, you know, I'm sure you've heard this talking point over and over, like how many people in Gaza are young, like are kids and stuff like that, and it is amazing how they've been able to survive. But I don't think a lot of us truly understand the desperation there. Like, I think the best outlet. Have you watched any Vice videos, reacted to Vice videos on Gaza?
Not yet, no.
If you ever get a chance, like, I think Vice has done the best job Vice News, like getting in there and actually speaking to people in Gaza. And that's honestly, that's where a lot of my understanding in recent years has come from watching those videos, because I think a lot of us don't have a true understanding. And even Hamas, like, obviously they're a terrorist organization at this point. You can't really argue that. But like,
well, we're not at this point. At their founding, they kind of were, right? Like the founding Hamas, like, had it in their creed that their goal was to genocide like Jewish people. Like they wanted to destroy Israel and kill every Jewish person in there. Right? I think they've actually moderated their official political platform a bit since then, but on the foundation of it, it was pretty horrible.
Is the language that they want to kill every Israeli, or is it that they want to end the Israeli state?
I'm pretty sure it was the genocide language. Like they literally wanted to kill every person. The original creed was extreme for Hamas. I think it was every Jew. I don't even think it was every Israeli. I think it was every Jew. We can look that up real quick if you want to fact check, but the initial charter was extreme. But I think the newer charter, I think they walked back some of that language and they said they just want to get rid of the state of Israel as opposed to the whole killing all the Jewish people part. But yeah, the original charter was insane, which I think also hurts because people will point to the fact that they didn't have a majority of the vote, only a plurality, 44%. 44% is a lot of people that want to kill like Jews, I think. That's like a pretty insane statement, but yeah. But also, I still don't necessarily disagree. Or no, I don't disagree at all that there should be like some, like, I think the conditions, the status quo for Palestine as a whole, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank collectively, are not acceptable living conditions for the Palestinian people, right? And the status quo is only going to produce more turmoil like this as time goes on. I think that's true. Has there been? I guess I don't want to like. Or I guess we can dive as much. Yeah, have I said, aside from a couple of memes on Twitter, do you think has there been anything that I've said where you're like, oh, I don't agree with this take, or I wish this would have been phrased differently, or I think this is just wrong, or?
Yeah, just generally, I think ignoring before Hamas, like the second intifada, the first intifada, these things have built up over generations. And when we talk about generations, like pretty quick generations, so even since the second intifada, like a lot of the active Hamas were babies during that. That's the early aughts. And so I think it's truly like integral to the story to like go before the 1980s and know that like originally protests were actually not so, they were fairly peaceful originally in terms of majority of people. They just wanted human rights. And whenever you take human rights away, it's just what do you expect? There's going to be extremism, and I think that we can't downplay that. And so, what are we creating today when we see more and more civilian casualties in Gaza? We're creating future terrorists.
Sure, I'm sympathetic towards that, and I understand that. And obviously, I think even Israel must be somewhat cognizant of that. I think the issue so far, though, is Israel doesn't see a clear solution that ensures its survival in the future. Because everything that involves granting rights back to Palestinians, everything that involves like reducing the embargo, giving them access to more electricity, food, water, supplies, trade, and everything, they see it as just building up basically they're just building up a future rival or enemy whose goal is to seek to completely and totally eliminate them in the future, like them and the other people that they're surrounded with. I think that's Israel's biggest worry, which again, that leads us to where we're at now, which is a status quo, which is unacceptable and somewhat chaotic, right? It's going to produce more of these types of events in the future, which aren't good. But I mean, I'm pretty sympathetic towards the Israeli side, given the history of the region, that they feel like every person there kind of wants to destroy their country.
Yeah, and on the flip side, the momentum of the past, you have acknowledged that because anti-Semitism for the last 2,000 years has been such a devastating thing.
Well, not even anti-Semitic. We can ignore that. Just anti-Zionism in the Middle East. Just like all of the other countries that have attempted to invade and destroy Israel as a nation, with the goals of a lot of those invaders being probably to kill all the Jewish people there as well, right? Because it's not just territorial. It is to some extent, but it's also probably driven by a little bit by religious fervor and ethnic fervor as well, right?
I don't know if you know this, but the original Zionists, a lot of them were secular. They wanted a secular state in Israel. They actually said, hey, we can coexist with who's there already. So like when we talk about Zionism going back to the late 1800s, I think it's also important to note that we shouldn't I know it seems idealistic, but I think the one state solution is something that still should be considered, because as long as you have safeguards in there for Israelis, because I think that should have been talked about more in, let's say, the 1930s versus the 2020s. But
how I feel like the one-state solution is entirely and completely off the table, especially given the history of all the conflict. How on earth could, right? Even even the PA has that fund for, martyrdom for killing Israeli people that they'll pay out your family or whatever into perpetuity after you die, and that's in the West Bank. I don't know if Israel would feel good with a one-state solution, especially if you start right of returning all of the Palestinian peoples, of which there are, 4, 5, 6, 7 million of them around the world, to come back and start voting. I don't think the Jewish people in that one state would feel very secure at that point.
I think right of return is unrealistic, definitely. I think that you'd have to have something in place that would be gradual and it'd be incremental. I do think it could work as long as there was UN intervention, maybe even a lot of other third parties as well, like coming to the table, Iran, United States, coming, when we look at the progress in that region over the past few decades, often what do we see? We see presidents forcing them to shake their hands together, like a Palestinian leader and an Israeli leader shaking their hands. And I think a lot of that is just PR and superficial. We've seen progress. I mean, even Trump was able to make some progress there. The Bush was, Clinton was, especially Jimmy Carter was, but I think you need other countries there, not just the United States as the third wheel.
Yeah, I agree, especially Iran.
It's like really the rest of the world needs to be involved, because this could ruin it for all of us. Like as a species, we need to consider that if they don't figure this out now, the survival of our species could be in jeopardy. And so I think everybody has to be. I mean, I'm so happy that everyone's finally paying attention to this, talking about this all the time. But don't pretend like any of us are experts on this stuff. I think it's like, I don't know, that's the thing I've been the most frustrated about on freaking Twitter. All these armchair experts, they think that they know. Like, I made a whole freaking video comparing Israel and Palestine. I had a Palestinian and an Israeli look it over. I took a graduate course. Actually, I took a history of Arab-Israeli conflict class at UNO with an Israeli instructor, and his friend co-taught it with him, who was Palestinian. I don't know anything about even all this research I've done on my own. I don't know anything about this crap. I can't even pretend to know about it. And so this has to be something where everybody has a voice. Sorry, that's the neighbor's dog, if you can hear that.
Okay.
He wails. But I think everybody has to be a part of this. When I say everybody, I mean the entire world, especially the big actors that have aided both sides. You'd probably agree with that, though, right?
Yeah, I do kind of agree. I don't. This might trigger you because you do history. A thing I've been repeating recently is I feel like in some ways history for regions is pretty important, and I also feel like in other ways history actually doesn't matter at all. I feel like sometimes, especially in conflicts like this, I feel like sometimes there's an overemphasis on the history, that when you are trying to figure out how to deal with a large group of people, sometimes it's tempting to say, well, in 1948 they shouldn't have been here, or these wars that happened in the 60s, and it's like that might have happened and that might be history, but we need to talk about the people as they exist right here, right now, and trying to focus on who was more right or who was more wrong in the 6-Day War, or who was more right or who was more wrong, back when Israel was buying weapons from Czechoslovakia, or back when Lebanon and Jordan and Egypt all wanted to destroy it. Like, those are conversations to be had. But I mean, like you said, like most of the people in the Gaza Strip are what, over half of them are under the age of 18. I don't think there has to be, the only reason I say this is because oftentimes so much conversation is stymied by, there's like a roadblock to where if you want to discuss any potential solution, somebody will be like, oh, well, do you know all the history? And it's like, well, no, but I don't even know all the history of Nebraska, right? But like, I don't know if somebody would say like, we did historical reading of like the indigenous tribes that were here before Omaha annexes Elkhorn, you know? Not to say that history is irrelevant, but yeah, I feel like sometimes people throw that up as a roadblock too much when it comes to discussing potential future solutions.
Yeah, and I get that. I kind of agree with you, actually, surprisingly, on that. However, that's what they bring up all the time. I mean, to them, 1948 is yesterday. When I say them, I mean most Palestinians, including the ones who have long, even generations down, been long gone from the region. And, you know, I think the thing is, there has to be good faith. Like, there has to be, I feel Israel has attempted to start to have the moral upper hand in terms of like, okay, we're trying to like make it so that we're only targeting terrorism, we're not hurting civilians. I get
to
that,
be clear, to say that very clearly, that's in Gaza. I don't think Israel has any moral upper hand when it comes to, for instance, their activities in the West Bank. I think they are morally bankrupt in that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, what's going on in the West Bank is also horrible, but it's more insidious, more sneaky. Vice has also done a really good work on that as well. But I think it's kind of something you'd have to pay attention to. You just, in this instance, because they're always thinking about it. It's always about revenge. Revenge is such a palpable thing. It's not something that maybe you or I can even truly understand, like, because we haven't lived through it. I mean, like, I try to think of what if China sent a drone to the United States, dropped a bomb on my house, killed all my family, I survived. I would spend the rest of my life on a mission, revenge against China. I would be.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, like, if there is political will for it in the right countries, I think anything can happen. I truly do believe that. And I think we need look no further than the end of World War II, where Germany and Japan were some of the most disgustingly, egregiously genocidal ethnic maniacs in the world. And, you know, in the course of some decades, they like rebuilt their reputation with their neighbors in a way that is shockingly unbelievable given how insane both of those countries and their regimes were in World War II when it came to the ethnic cleansing of all of their fucking neighbors. I mean, like, nobody in Germany now, or I'm sorry, nobody like in Europe now looks at Germany as like, oh, the fucking Nazis, right? Germany's like the leader economically, the powerhouse of Europe now, you know? And a lot of people don't like, yeah, and even for Japan, I think a lot of people don't like Japanese people. I think they say they're stuck up in Southeast Asia. But I mean, like, even so, it is possible to do that, right? It is possible that if all of Europe can get over the fact that Germany like fucking conquered all of them and killed so many people, and now they're like, fuck it, let bygones be bygones. If people are trading and working with Japan, there is a way forward to solve these problems. There just has to be the will for it, you know?
Honestly, most of the Middle East, I think, is a lot cooler with Israel than it used to be. The only countries I think of as still being like, okay, Israel, I don't know about you, is Syria, which there's a territorial dispute with the Golan Heights, which has been ongoing for decades. And then Lebanon. Even Lebanon, though, it's really changed even the last 10 years. Like, Egypt has been
I think Hezbollah was still firing rockets, I think, just a few days ago, right? From Lebanon? So...
I know they're still...
And then also there is a territorial dispute with Syria over the Golan Heights, but Israel only has that territory because Syria tried to invade Israel with a bunch of other countries, and they ended up conquering it, right? But yeah. And then because I think they're worried that Syria likes to lob rockets at them from up there as well, right? And then a lot of this is driven by Iran, too, which I think is not the biggest fan of Israel, so... Yeah, I think the issue, my read on it, my very weak read, because obviously I don't know everything, but it feels like there's not very much political will right now in the United States to take a hard stance on anything in the Middle East. We're very like last war brained, and everybody's mind is still basically fucking poisoned from Iraq. And I think that makes us unwilling. We don't have the public support to really take a strong stance on anything other than Biden maybe sending some money and saying, "Don't be too crazy, guys."
What do you think about him sending humanitarian aid to Gaza? Did you agree with that?
I think Biden has done a phenomenal job on all of his foreign policy. I'm actually shocked. I think Biden has done a really good job at telling people, we're not just going to indiscriminately kill Palestinians. We don't want to make the same mistakes we did after 9/11. Obviously, we want to support Israel, but you can't accept it. I think he's done a good job at that. So, yeah, I mean, I hesitantly generally support aid to Gaza. I don't know if somebody's about to show me an email that like, oh, well, actually, all of that aid goes to Hamas. That would be bad. But I mean, like, roughly speaking, it's 2 million people. We can't just start killing hundreds of thousands of them. That would be horrible, right?
Yeah. And it's also important, like another war going on right now, Russia, Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Many Ukrainians, it's the same situation in terms of relations with. They remember the history as if it's yesterday in terms of what happened in the 1930s, in terms of how the Soviet Union treated Ukrainians. And so when it's like there are certain examples where I think you cannot ignore history, just back to my earlier point. Mm-hmm. And so taking the lead in terms of progress should be, I think, the more moderate Palestinians, get them to the table. But also, it's okay, and obviously Israelis, but also get other countries like Iran into the negotiations, because otherwise they're going to continue to secretly fund these terrorist organizations, Hezbollah and Hamas. It's just, I think there has to be these continued back and forth, and to pretend like the United States can solve this, it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, I kind of agree with you on Biden. He's done pretty well in terms of not getting in it too deep, but trying to like say, okay, acknowledging that. But still, like overwhelmingly, can you admit that most American politicians are scared to death to criticize Israel? Most of them.
Yeah, probably. I think if you're over 40, I think you just have it's kind of like a de facto that you support Israel. That's just been, as far as I can remember, older people in the United States. Yeah, Israel is like our one democratic shining ally in the Middle East. Yeah. So yeah, that's not surprising at all to me that criticism of Israel is pretty harshly contraindicated by most people, even if they deserve to be criticized. Although I will say, I believe Obama was pretty big on hardcore criticizing Israel for the expansion of settlements in the West Bank. I think he stated multiple times that this is stuff that's going to make it impossible to reach any sort of peace solution or any sort of conflict resolution between you guys if you continue to do this. So
look how much he was attacked for doing that.
Yeah.
By people on the lean to the right. And also it's important to recognize that Netanyahu is pretty far to the right. If you look at previous leadership in Israel, over the years, it's gone more and more to the right. And there's several people in Israel, Jewish, who are not happy, who have been protesting Netanyahu. And also, if you look at the fact that Jews and Arabs have lived side by side, many live in the same neighborhoods within Israel, I don't think that's brought up enough. So I think at the root of it is we have to kind of get rid of this nationalism and at least entertain the idea of hey, maybe it doesn't have to be a religious state, because theocracy, I'm not a fan of theocracies. Maybe a secular solution is what we need to aspire to.
I understand what you're saying there, but it comes off as it comes off in the United States as black people complaining about a particular facet of, Jim Crow or maybe even going back far enough to slavery. And then me being listen, let's all just be people. Okay. Does it really matter if we're black and white? Let's all just be people. And, the African-American, the black response is listen, it would be cool if we could all just be people. But, prior to 64, I was African-American. I was black. There were literally different rules in the books for me. I want to be a person like you, but I can only be the person that people treat me as or perceive me as. And I think the same can be said for Jewish people in the Middle East. It's easy to look, I think, from the US and say like, oh, it should just be a secular state and everybody should be chill. But I think Jewish people or Israeli citizens in the Middle East were like, okay, it's cool that you want us all to be people, but like there are people here that are invested in our destruction because we're Jewish. So it's kind of weird to pretend that we're all like the same, cut from the same like human stock, when there are people that want to murder us because of our ethnic backgrounds or because of these border disputes. I think that's a much harder sell.
Well, there's just so much variation though that within. It's like I tend to be against lumping groups all together. Actually, this is the root of what triggered me when you were tweeting. Is like there are more than 14 million Palestinians around the world. To assume that they all think alike and to lump them all in with Hamas, like that to me was offensive. And I guess like we need to start by understanding that there are several factions within that all have conflicting interests, and we're never going to be able to make all of them happy. But we should really truly listen to the peaceful, moderate Palestinians who all they want is human rights. And also, like, instead of attacking a straw man, which, you know, the most extreme example, like these people that were saying kill all Jews, that's an extreme example. The vast majority of Palestinians, I don't think want to genocide
I feel like
Jews.
It was maybe not genocide Jews, but it feels like when you look at the protests around the world, and I fully admit it could be the confirmation bias of what I see on Twitter. Yeah, it could just be, but it feels like a lot of the protests I'm seeing, things like From River to Sea, things like Free Palestine, the abolition of Israel as a state, it feels like that's the calling card for, yeah. So, I mean, and now it could be that there are a whole bunch of Palestinians that, or people that are pro-Palestine that don't support the total abolition of Israel as a state. That could be the case, and I just don't see them anywhere. But man, from every big interview, from every big, influencer, from every huge Twitter thread, it seems like it's pulling teeth to get a Palestinian to admit that, like, killing Israeli babies is wrong. Like, they have to qualify the fuck out of that a million times when they say it. And I think if you're an Israeli citizen, you look at that and everybody's telling you, like, well, make peace with these people that are using phrases like settler babies. That's probably a really hard sell, I think, for a lot of people in Israel. Like, because they're looking at everybody around. Like, even what you just said, like, why can't we have a secular government? Why does it be theocratic? First of all, Israel is a democracy, right? Israel's surrounded by theocracies, right? So I mean, like, the idea, like, they need to be the ones that are going to be secular when they're literally, surrounded by, theocratic regimes, and you've got like the Ayatollah from fucking Iran, you've got Syria. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's a big ask, I feel, when Israel is like truly probably the only one that's worried that they could get wiped off the map, right? Now, again, unless I'm missing something modern day, I don't know, like if Lebanon or Jordan or Egypt or Syria or Iraq are like, oh God, our country's going to be wiped away from existence. I don't know if anybody's worried about that. I think Israel is worried about that. I think they have those fears. That's my feeling on it. Yeah. Yeah,
I shouldn't downplay those fears. You're right. I mean, they have pretty big allies. The United States is kind of there to Big Brother. So who?
I don't think they are, though. Like, it's not. The U.S. has never done like direct military intervention on behalf of Israel. I don't know if we would. I'm not sure, because that's like the World War III shit,
Right. They've been sneaky about it. It's been like a lot of Middle Eastern foreign policy has been like that. That's why the CIA is like, you know what? We're just going to stop telling the public. We're just going to do stuff.
Well, I mean, like, Iraq was an invasion. The first Gulf War was an invasion. That was where the first Gulf War, I would argue, was largely good. We had a moral mandate there, absolutely.
The United Nations was on our side back then, yeah.
Yeah, and Saddam was invading a country using chemical weapons, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But the we are. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we help Israel in terms of, like, obviously, like, sending them arms and everything, and there's probably some, like, special forces, at least, like, training or something that goes on. But I don't think, I don't know if the United States, if push came to shove, if we would have, like, boots on the ground, or if we'd be flying, like, ships or deploying, aircraft carriers. I don't think we would do that for Israel. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know.
That would be poking the bear for sure.
Yeah, I think Biden's current statement is the U.S. has no plans. There's not even a discussion right now for having people on the ground. So, and there has been a lot of conflict in Israel historically, where the United States hasn't intervened whatsoever. It's just been Israel basically on their own, But
yeah, checking in on the comments here.
Yeah, go for it.
somebody said Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon are all secular, but I think that's not necessarily. I mean, they're more secular than maybe not. Like that's another thing too. We tend to simplify governments as if they fit into this box. Oh, the United States is a democracy. Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. Even Israel has a flawed democracy if you look at some of the things.
I mean, it depends on what we'd call obviously people will argue back and forth on what a democracy means. But I think largely speaking, like, do people vote? And then from that voting, does stuff happen? I think, like, broadly speaking, I would call that a democracy, right? Most of it is done via representative democracy. You vote for politicians that go to some legislative body and they vote on things. And then, yeah, but, you know. I'm sorry, I have a lot of Jewish fans now. So some of them are asking, why has the Palestinian National Authority, the Fatah-controlled authority in the West Bank, why haven't they held elections since Hamas won the last one in 2006? I'm getting that question a lot.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's the Palestinians have been horrible on the Democratic front, and it's like that's how I don't know if we even have a good gauge as far as where most Palestinians stand, because their voices are not heard, especially. But then you're also like if their voices are not heard, that just leads to further extremism.
Sure.
And it's just, my lifetime, it's amazing to see how much worse. Like, you don't think it can get any worse, and it has gotten just progressively worse.
Yeah. And then also there's after that second Intifada, Israel pulled all of the settler camps out of the Gaza Strip and left it completely. And then right after that, you get Hamas, who explicitly in their charter is talking about genociding Jewish people. I feel like if you go to an Israeli citizen, it's like, okay, well, time to pull out of the West Bank next. I can, even though I think that Israel's actions in the West Bank are atrocious, I can understand the hesitation to leave the West Bank as well.
Yeah, they're just worried. I mean, especially now after what happened on October 7th, it's not going to be. And that's what a lot of people have also said. There have been some pretty dumb takes, as far as the people defending Palestine, but I will grant that. But again, I think a lot of that is if you think about how the internet works, we see the most extreme examples because outrage gets clicks, outrage gets attention, and that's, I think, probably the tweets I saw from you were the ones that were like, you kind of knew what you're doing. I know what I'm doing sometimes, and I
feel like most of my tweets are pretty good. I think I had 2 memes. The only meme I wish I could redo was the Palestinian flag one, to make that a Hamas flag. Although I realized afterwards the point of that tweet wasn't to say that all Palestinians are like Hamas. The point of the tweet was, it seems like if you're pro-Palestine, you could basically be almost completely anti-Semitic, but if you were a Nazi, people would freak out. But afterwards I realized that people were saying oh, he's saying all of Palestine. I was like, oh fuck, I guess I could have changed that. But otherwise I feel like most of my tweets have been pretty reasonable. I've usually encouraged people not to be radicalized on both sides, not to become crazy anti-Palestinian. Yeah, unless you've seen other tweets of mine that you super disagree with, then we can hash those out if you want.
That's all I could think of at the moment. But yeah, okay. That's often what happens on the freaking platform is your point goes over the heads of half of the people looking at it. So, and yeah. So how are we going to solve the Israeli-Arab conflict? How shall we end it? I do. It's weird, the whole one-state solution thing. I never even really contemplated until last couple of years, and I don't know. Obviously, it's not ready anytime soon. But I think as a long-term goal, I think more people should bring it up. I just don't think Jewish people just don't feel like the Arabs in the region want them to exist. The worry is that if they do a one-state, and then equal rights are granted to all the Palestinians in terms of voting and everything, and that Arabs begin to massively outnumber Jewish people in their own country, well, what was their own country, that they're just on a path to destruction, essentially. They would have to have extremely secure borders. They would have to have.
The borders wouldn't matter anymore. They'd be destroyed from within, because they would eventually their rights would be voted away, or the structure of government would change. There
would have to be third-party protections in place for the Jewish people there.
I agree with you there, but the third-party protections are very easy when it comes to a two-state solution. But how do third parties intervene in your own government? That would be much more difficult, you know?
I mean, we saw it after World War II.
No, we didn't. No, that wasn't third-party intervention. That was invasion and destruction, right? Nobody stopped Hitler when he did the Enabling Act, right?
I'm saying after World War II, we Western nations went into Germany, led by the United States, and we helped rebuild their government. We tried to do the same in Iraq, and that hasn't turned out the best, although it used to be worse. And Japan as well. Like, those were success stories. Like, you had...
I agree, those were success stories, but in order to get there, right, we don't want to create a one-state solution where we're going to come back and do a full invasion, military occupation, destruction, and rebuild of the country. Because that's what happened with Germany and Japan, right? It's not like we went in like, hey, guys, let's kind of change the government here, right? And that was only after the most horrific war crimes in all of human history had been committed by the Japanese and the Germans. So if you're saying to Israel, like, well, listen, you guys do one state, if it gets fucked up again, I mean, like, you guys remember Germany and Japan, we fixed them eventually, right? Like, as the Jewish population in the world gets halved, and as Japan is experimenting and running swords through hundreds of Chinese babies in contests with other captains, like, yeah, I don't think Jewish people are too keen to go down that road and wait for the rest of the liberal world to save them if it happens, you know?
I think those million Gazans, people live in Gaza Strip,
2 million,
are under the age of 18. I think there's still hope for them that they don't have to hate Jews. Like, I think that we can invest in them. And if you look at ISIS, the rise of ISIS was because of, again, desperation. Because when we took out Saddam Hussein, there was this vacuum of power, and then the United States leaves, and then all of a sudden you have these different warlords essentially trying to take over when the government had little control. I mean, we caused the power vacuum. Same with Afghanistan. The Taliban, like, they just swept right in, didn't they? And so we have to prevent that vacuum from happening. So that's where you have to have a really strong presence there for, maybe a long time. But that's not just the United States. It's the entire world. It's the United Nations leads the effort.
Sure.
And you bring humanitarian aid, you bring stability, you make them rich, you bring, because people will not become extreme if they have their necessities met. So, and this might take a couple generations, but I think it's possible.
Hopefully, maybe, hopefully, yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, Bin Laden came from a really fucking rich family, and he got a lot of money from, Saudi Arabia, from people in the Gulf states. ISIS got a lot of money from the Gulf states. Qatar is not a poor country. The UAE is not a poor country. Saudi Arabia is not a poor country. Look at all of the funding they do for the war in Yemen. I agree with you for the most part. Like, I'm being a little contrarian. I broadly agree that when you put people in shitty situations, they will become radicalized. They will commit terror attacks like October 7th. You can't turn a blind eye to the Palestinian plight and then look at what happens to Israel and go, oh my God, this is horrible. How did this ever happen, right? I agree with you. That's obviously horrible. But this situation is it's relatively unique, and that it feels like Israel is singularly poised against the entire world in that region, really. And I think that's their fear. But yeah, I also agree. That's what I've been advocating for, that a solution involving Israel and the Palestinians, it needs to be a talk where the United States is bringing both Israel, Palestine, and then Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Iran, probably fucking Saudi Arabia, Qatar. These countries all have to come to the table to ensure that there is a stable agreement worked out. But then, like I said, I just don't know if people in the U.S. care enough, and I don't know if people in the Middle East care that much. If they need, I don't know if an unstable Israel, Palestine is hurting these other countries enough for them to want to come and negotiate. I don't know about that. I'm not sure.
No, they should care. And somebody commented, I don't see how you could ever trust people who despise your existence. Well, we're not talking about those who are already radicalized. We're talking about future generations. Like, somebody that's born in Japan today, they're not born oh, the freaking United States, they dropped nukes on us. Mm-hmm. No, that was their great-great-grandfather. So we're talking about investing in future generations. And again, there's a lot of young people who don't lose hope in these young people, that because they've only heard one voice. They've heard Hamas.
Sure.
And so they don't even know there's other voices. It's being raised in a fundamentalist household, and then all of a sudden oh, I didn't even know there was all these other religions. So that's, I think, the key, investing in the future.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. It's just a difficult path to walk, and we have to have the political will for it.
Radicalization happens at conception, Mr. Beat.
Well, anything else?
I'll leave you alone. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, no problem.
We should do this more often.
Yeah. How's wait, do you still live in Omaha? Do you say that publicly, or?
Oh no, I moved back down to Kansas in 2009, so that was.
Oh wow, jeez,
yeah.
A traitor.
Yeah, I know.
Do you live in Kansas City, or are you in some place way out there?
I'm out in Lawrence, which is about 30 minutes west. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Where KU is, Kansas University.
Gotcha. Well, how's life? Do you do a lot of history videos on like? I feel like if you're a history guy, I feel like doing history videos around politically charged topics is probably some of the most infuriating, because that's probably when everybody on the internet becomes an expert in a field that you've studied for a decent bit, and then you realize how mind-numbingly stupid most of the conversation is. Yeah.
I make political history content. That's the most fascinating, and economic history too. But like, yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it's sad because a lot of times historians are just like quietly predicting the future. They're like saying this is going to happen.
Thank you to Home Title.
And then everyone just ignores them. And then when it does happen, they continue to ignore them. So I don't consider myself a historian, though. I consider myself a communicator, a storyteller. And so I just try to like take those books that historians write and translate them to make them more accessible to the wider public. That's the way I consider. I mean, same thing I did when I was teaching teenagers in high school. So.
Do you teach at all anymore, or have you been doing YouTube full time for like 15 years, or?
No, I left the classroom in 2021, so I taught for 12 years, middle school, high school, yeah, in the city area. Although I student taught, shout out to Westside Middle School in Omaha.
Oh shit, I think that's I don't know if my kid's gonna go. I haven't decided yet if he's going to Westside or if he's gonna go to Creighton Prep, which is where I went. So.
Oh, Creighton Prep, that's famously where Connor Oberst went, and all Saddle Creek people.
Yep, indeed, a few of them ahead of me, yeah. Yeah. What was it like? So you taught through some of the COVID times, right? I think.
Yeah, that was my last year teaching.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough. Well, for the first semester, I had like half of my students were online only, and so I was like doing video teaching, and then I had students in class who were supposed to be wearing masks, but half of them, it was dragged down. It was just stressful, and then plus parents all of a sudden decided they wanted to like try to take over the curriculums, and they were like, around the same time as it was a rough year. I'm glad that YouTube worked out. Like,
I was going to say, something that I thought was really funny is a lot of, post-COVID, everybody's getting mad about LGBT stuff in the classroom, blah, 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 blah. I wonder if COVID was just the first time a lot of parents actually saw what their kids were studying in class, just because they were around it so much more, because they were either staying home from work or like kids were bringing more stuff home. And until then, like nobody had even like cared or paid attention to anything. I'm super curious about that.
I think that's probably true, yeah, because I mean, and then also they, at the same time, some of those parents are like, I really appreciate these teachers, because like, I mean, let's say the quiet part out loud, a lot of times it's babysitting. You're just watching over these kids, and they just have to jump through hoops. You're teaching them how to jump through hoops to graduate, so they can later in life jump through hoops to survive. And but honestly, to me, that was the best part, because like the relationship building with the kids, like I always thought that teenagers were actually weirdly like, they gave me hope for the future, because every year my kids got a little bit smarter and a little bit more. They were better at critically thinking, and so I was like, "Whoa, this is great for the future." And then people my age were like, regressing in terms of like becoming more bigoted the older they got. And so for many years that was kind of like fuel for me. And then parents come in, and that's the regressive part. They're like, well, you're not teaching it how we did. That's not how we did math. This Common Core crap.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
yeah.
Do you even know what Common Core is? Common Core is more skills based. If anything, you want more skills over just like spoon feeding them information. So.
Yeah, we went over a lot of the, that was popular like 5 or 6 years ago, where the people ranting and raving about Common Core math and the different ways to kind of like teach math stuff. And I hadn't realized how, I think I don't want to say I'm gifted. I have a pretty good head for math. I did a lot of math in high school, and there was a lot of like stuff that showed up a lot in Common Core, and I just kind of assumed that like, oh, this is what everybody does. And I realized once a lot of the Common Core math stuff came out, like, oh, people don't think of that. Like, people don't do 22 times 20 as like 20 times 20 plus 2 times, like people don't just do that automatically. They actually, people in their head try to like cross multiply, and that blew my fucking mind. And then once a lot of the Common Core, like the number lines and stuff started to come out for how they would teach it, parents would get super ass mad that their kids were learning math in a different way, and it became like this ideological struggle against the federal government or something. And it's like, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I was taught that way. Shoot, I always struggled with math.
Yeah, the Oh, the one thing we don't talk about it as much more. I never want to let old people fucking forget this fucking shit. I remember growing up so much, okay? I heard so many goddamn times from older people, don't believe everything on the internet, don't trust the internet, read books, don't do the internet, read books. And who gets radicalized more by stupid fucking Facebook memes than anybody else now? It's goddamn boomers, okay? People in their 60s, 70s. I was so happy 10 years ago when my mom told me she stopped watching Fox News. She was like, oh, sick, you're like getting better news sources, I guess. And it turned into fucking Facebook. I couldn't believe that shit, okay? Yeah, god damn it. For all of the internet scaremongering that boomers did growing up, they fucking love that shit now. Holy shit. All that QAnon shit, everything came from the internet, and all the Hillary Clinton and Seth Richards and all this stupid shit. Like, unbelievable, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. I never forget when I had a cousin make the claim that Obama was a Muslim. And I said, can you give me evidence for that? Good evidence? And she sent me a meme.
True.
Yeah.
I remember that was back in the good days when a good conspiracy theory was that Obama might have been Muslim. Those were the good days. Now the conspiracy theories are that Hawaii wildfires are being started by Jewish space lasers so that Oprah Winfrey can increase the property value of her mansion in fucking Maui or whatever. Like, oh, I remember conspiracy theories used to be simpler, not as crazy. Jesus, yeah.
I'm making a video right now about the JFK assassination, and I used to be really deep into the JFK conspiracies, and over time I've moderated. I'm like, okay, maybe the CIA knew about it, or knew about Oswald, I should say. I'll give you that, but everything else I'm just like, oh my gosh. Once you actually like do the research, you're like, oh, this isn't, it's boring. A lot of history is boring, and so I get, you're like, conspiracy theories are fun, you know, they're interesting. Good stuff, and secret information is appealing.
Yeah, I feel the same way with like 9/11 and like a lot of Holocaust stuff. That like when you actually, I watched some 6-hour godforsaken documentary called The New Pearl Harbor about 9/11, and when you actually start going through and you research like all the different claims, like, oh, this is obviously this, or this is obviously not true, or this is, you know, whatever. Yeah, and then things are not usually as interesting or crazy as they seem. Although there are some interesting or crazy things that's happened historically, but yeah.
Like the Tuskegee experiment.
Sure.
You know about that one?
Yeah, which is bad. That is bad, yeah. I believe that was, they basically had, it wasn't that many people. People think this is like the entire country, but I want to say it was under 100 people. Was it 200? Okay, it might have been 200, but yeah. Basically.
Maybe like 500.
Oh, was it 500? Okay, I'd have to go and check the numbers. 500 sounds high, but I'd have to go back and check. But yeah, basically, I think African Americans were coming in for treatment for some issue, and I think doctors were told to lie to them when they had certain STDs, like I think syphilis, and not treat them for it. And then they just watched how the disease progressed to see if it would like make them infertile and stuff. I think that was it, right?
Yeah, you make it sound less interesting. But I think that's basically it. Yeah, that's, you know, it's still, I mean, it is exciting just like when historians get to declassified stuff for the first time. They're like, oh, they were doing some shady or morally questionable stuff, you know? So we'll probably find out some things. I mean, there was really the whole Cold War, there was a bunch of weird stuff. Operation Paperclip always gets brought up.
True. But don't forget this, and don't let anybody fucking forget this, because it always triggers the fuck out of me. People bring up, okay, hold on. I just want to be very clear on this, okay? And if you disagree with this, we can fight over this, okay? People say cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds, all right? Liberals were the ones that beat the goddamn Nazis, okay? The communists and the socialists, all these motherfuckers wanted to make alliances with the Nazis, okay? They did it with Molotov, Ribbentrop, whatever. They did it. And then afterwards, okay, a lot of these fucking lefties will point out like, oh, what about Operation Paperclip, where we took all the Nazis? And, well, yeah, okay, we brought some literal scientists, okay, to capture their knowledge and everything and not let it fall on us. But also, the Soviet Union did the exact fucking same thing, and they took more than us. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like Kim or whatever. This operation, they took over 2,000 of those Nazi German scientists, and they took them into their country. So yeah, the idea that like the United States was like alone in this, like taking some, like you have to take the researchers, otherwise I'll go to the other team. Yeah, but yeah, I fucking hate communists. Sorry.
And just because they did it doesn't mean it was right for us to do it.
No, I think it was right for us to do it. Like it's difficult, but like, I mean, if you've got researchers that have been working on stuff, I mean, like, what are you going to do? I mean, other than, are you going to kill all the researchers?
Steal their information.
What?
That's what you do. You steal their information.
Yeah, but I mean, that's basically what we did by bringing them over, right?
Well, we also just like treated them like normal human beings, like they didn't do anything wrong. Like some
Well,
of
I
them
don't
in
think
particular at
we
the death
didn't.
camps.
Wasn't it just researchers in general? We weren't taking. I don't think we were necessarily taking people that were like injecting, dye into children's eyes in death camps. Were we for Operation Paperclip? Were there some of
Oh
those?
yeah, no, mostly no, yeah, mostly it was just researchers. You're right. I think there's like a couple extreme examples. I'm doing the same thing I accused you doing
Sure.
earlier, cherry picking. But yeah, no, I just think it's more of an optics thing again. Like there were like a couple examples of scientists who were indeed at I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but people in the chat can look it up. Like that were at the death camps, and you could say played a role. But I mean, yeah, like I just find it interesting the fact that this was something that we did not know about. It's a CIA operation, and then we find out about it decades later. So who knows what we're going to find out in the future? What's been going on?
Yeah.
MK Ultra is my favorite. That's the one I want to make a video about that one because.
I feel like my favorite one for the MK Ultra one was the school experiments where they tried to like break down like intelligent college kids psychologically. Have you ever heard about this?
Just a little bit. I'm not too familiar with it.
This is like, I want to do more reading on this at some point. I should, just because it sounds fascinating to me. They would bring in kids, they would learn a lot about them, and then they would, under the guise of it being like a job interview or something else, they would just try to psychologically destroy these kids that they would bring in for interviews. And the most interesting part about that experiment was one of these children, an incredibly gifted math student, was Ted Kaczynski. He was the guy that went on to become the Unabomber. He was part of one of these MK Ultra experiments. That's really interesting to me. But I don't know how strong that connection is, something I want to read more. But if you do MK Ultra, cover that so I can steal your content by watching the video as a React streamer, okay?
Yeah. All right. I'll add it to my endless list. Somebody brought up the Stanford prison experiment.
I think people have been fighting a lot about the results of that, on whether or not the interpretations were good or bad, or if Zimbardo was actually encouraging those students to be more crazy than they would have on their own. I thought I saw something about it a few years ago, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing too with a lot of technology that we currently consume that we don't realize is bad for us, but it's just there's this new information later on, and then we look back on. And then also a lot of people give me crap because like I not support, but I was like, oh, Robert La Follette was a good senator. I thought he was a good politician. He was a senator during the progressive era, the like early 1900s through the 1920s, and I get comments like all the time, Mr. Beat, he was a eugenicist. And I'm like, you realize that eugenics was actually fairly mainstream in the 1920s to a point where the Supreme Court actually upheld it. They said it was legal. So, like, I mean, it's the whole historical relativism thing. It's, George Washington had slaves. Okay, like,
yeah.
You can't just... we always pretend like if we went back in time 100 years that we would be, so progressive. I mean, if we were raised... You know what I mean? Like if we were born in the 1800s and we were raised like they were raised, we would be different. We would be ahead of our time. No, we wouldn't. Most of us would believe the same crap that they did back then.
Yeah. I think the recent history over the past few weeks has shown us that people are obviously susceptible to insane shit, just based on who they follow on Twitter. How do you feel about? I'm curious. How do you feel about? I'm going to ask you two questions: an easy one and a harder one, or maybe they're both hard, or maybe they're both easy. The first one is, how do you feel about people that want to tear down statues of people that wouldn't pass our current moral test? So for instance, like if you had an old president that was a slave owner, should you not have a wing in a library in a school named after him? Should you rename it or take down the statues? That's the first question. And the second one, how do you feel about people in the South that want to tear down old Confederate statues or rename like Robert E. Lee monuments or, wings of schools or whatever? Yeah, I'm curious where you stand on those two things.
I think generally it's not good to erase what history, obviously, being a history teacher. And so like, can you at least put it in a museum? So we can, at the same time, I understand like it should, in my opinion, be up to the local community. So if you have people in Alabama that have no problem with a Robert E. Lee statue, including, I should say, African Americans that live there. If they don't care, then might as well leave it up. But if the local community is offended by it, like if you are an African American that has to walk by that statue to school every single day and you're reminded of white supremacy, then yeah, like you should organize and make it happen so that statue's down, or at least taken to a museum, not out there like proudly displayed. So I can get that side, but again, I think I'm a big fan of localism. Like we shouldn't have a broad brush for the entire country, and like all statues must come down. Now that said, there's been examples in history where we can make exceptions. Like I think de-Stalinization was a good thing for the Soviet Union. I think tearing down all the Joseph Stalin statues,
sure,
after
although
they found out that he was
largely to what you were saying before, though, probably because the people in the area really wanted those statues to come down, right?
Sure, that was that had broad support around the country. Yeah, an exception, but what is your opinion on that? I don't know if I know about that.
I don't know. I'm like a candle in the wind or a leaf in the wind. I think I got blown around a few different ways on that, mainly because my opinion on it isn't too strong. I've heard, I think the initial argument is like it's part of history. It stands here as a monument to history, both the good and the bad, and that should be respected. You can't just expect to delete history and get rid of some things and pretend it never was, especially since the same people that seem so keen to destroy these statues are the same ones that obsess over the crimes of America in the past. I've heard that one. But then I heard, I think this is the counter argument I heard that completely blew that away. People just said, like, realistically, the statues and the monuments, the things that exist in areas, it changes all the time. And if certain people in an area want to take something down and put something else up, like, we're totally okay to do that. Like, we're going to continue to do that. We've only got so much space. It's not like we can have an infinite number of monuments. So if people in an area decide they want to take something down and put something up, then they should be free to do that as well. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on it. I don't really care that much. I think actually what you said, I think, is if the people in an area want to take something down and put something else up, then I mean they're the ones that have to see it every day. They're the ones that have to live with it, the implications and everything. So yeah, it's probably up to them.
You make a good point. Like, I always wonder, like, in 200 years, what statues are we still going to see left? Like, are we going to see an actual statue of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or something? Like,
sure.
Who knows what we're going to value in the future? We just can't even predict.
I agree.
It doesn't have to be politicians that are statues.
Did you see that huge John Cena statue that they put up in the middle of Omaha?
Oh my gosh, no. Where's it at? Like downtown?
I'm just kidding. You'll never see it.
Dang it, you had my... Oh, so excited.
That was a good joke, chat. Okay, sorry.
He didn't, yeah. It appered.
Okay, who else am I... anything else? I'm trying to think of any. Did you only teach history in school?
Well, specifically, I taught American history, world history, economics. Let's see. Oh, APUSH, AP US. Yeah, like. So yeah, I mean, people also think that I'm no expert on world history. I only taught it for 2 or 3 years. My forte is American political history. That's my main thing. And I already seen the comments. I'm known as the president's guy. I have so many president videos. It's ridiculous. So oh, what time periods? Mostly last couple 100 years.
Do you have opinions on, this is kind of a pit from that. Oh wait, actually, hold on, I want to ask you one question. I'll ask this. Did you like the AP kids more than the normal kids? Now that you're not a teacher anymore, you can say.
They were definitely more fun to talk to about history.
Okay.
Although some of them, like a little bit too, I get, what do you call it, like A-type personality, where they're just like, everything has to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. I got along pretty well with the kids that screwed around in my class a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, this weird situation where and those are the kids like I still stay in touch with for the most part. Some like the kids that were good in class, and like suck up to the teacher, like, sorry, but I'm not as likely to remember you later on, which is kind of sad because, like, I want to thank them for being such good students. They made my job a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so AP kids are better. Do you have an opinion on AP versus IB? Those fucking IB losers.
Wait, what's IB?
Is it International Bachelorette? It was basically like there was an alternative to. You could either do AP classes, you could do IB classes, and the IB kids always felt like they were elitist compared to the AP kids, but
I'm not familiar. It must be a Nebraska thing. Yeah, because like we have dual credit down here in Kansas, but it's basically just a college class they take in high school.
Yeah. Baccalaureate? I don't know how the fuck you pronounce it, guys. Shut up. Oh, okay. Final question. Did you ever have any opinions on the whole React streamer drama? Did you get involved in that or throw your hat into the ring for that?
Oh, are you talking about Jack's Films?
Oh, no. That was boring. That's Wolf, Sniper, Wolf, or whatever. Or I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, no. What are you talking about?
Like the XQC, Hassan. Do you know Lemino, the YouTuber?
Heard of them.
Yeah, it basically was like streamers watching full YouTube videos on stream and like minimally reacting to it. There was this blew up. It blows up every year or two, and then this was a huge thing like a month or two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, you were getting crap earlier when you walked away. I thought maybe you were trolling. No, like, yeah, like that's pretty messed up in my opinion. I think we have a way, this is an interesting, you're probably not aware of. There's a few history tuber reaction channels. And the thing that is the most common criticism about reaction channels that only react to history content is that they call it lazy. Critics say, oh, this is just lazy content. Because like I spend like a good 40, 50 hours on one video. That's a lot of time. And then for somebody who's a reaction channel, they just like watch it in real time. And that's 1 hour versus 50 hours. And so I can kind of see both sides of that. This is actually pretty, the closest we got in the history tuber community to drama, that was it. Because, you got Vlogging Through History, shout out to Vlogging Through History. We're friends, but he's got this criticism. He also releases original content. But the guy that really went after him was CGP Grey. Are you familiar with CGP Grey?
I am. I think he sued that guy, didn't he? Or did he do DMCA takedowns or something? But
yeah, DMCA takedowns, two strikes. And so one more, his channel would have been down. And so this was a big drama between the two. And I was a fence setter. I was like, I can kind of see both sides. I also kind of biased because I'm friends with Chris, Vlogging Through History. I've met CGP Grey, but I don't really... yeah, I mean, if you spend a lot of time on something, and then now there's the new issue of AI. So like, there's a lot of AI channels on YouTube, and it's in terms of like, I'm always like, hey, if you can find a shortcut and you're not hurting anybody, go for it. But at the same time, it does feel kind of a little dirty when someone can just get almost as many views as you and put in like 1/50th of the work.
The work, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the closest I can relate to like having feelings, because otherwise the streamer drama I usually stay out of. I know, aren't you? You don't like Hassan, do you? Like, you guys have... Like,
yeah, we're beefing, I'd say.
Yeah, I did see you when you went to DC in the flesh with, was it Valve and...
Rokana, yeah. And Emily Vigland. And then... yeah, Ryan Grimm, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was like... Because, like, it was one of the best conversations I'd heard on the platform, actually. And when you're in person, I think that whole new dynamic of the body language comes more... I don't know. It was real. You should do more stuff like that.
Yeah, I try to do in-person stuff. Left-leaning people usually want to stay as far away from opposition as possible, though. So all of my in-person stuff is with crazy right-wing people, unfortunately. But yeah.
We need to change that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to engage with them. Or you're platforming them. Okay. Well,
exactly. That's the issue. Yeah.
I mean, you got to burst through echo chambers. That's what you do. You burst through several echo chambers. So, good for you.
All right. Well, any other final thoughts, or do you want to plug a new video you're working on, or anything like that, or?
Oh, I'm doing another live stream tonight with Zoe B. If anyone wants to check out. Thank you to Home. She does a lot of PragerU debunking videos, like I do.
Jesus, so I thought you were about to say does a lot of PragerU videos. Oh boy.
Oh no, yeah, we definitely criticize PragerU. So yeah, join us tonight over. Subscribe, Mr. Beat, not Mr. Beast. Although I get the confusion. We look alike. So
yeah. Okay.
Thanks for having me. Just do it again sometime.
Yeah, no problem. And you're on my friends list now. I don't know why we weren't friends before, but you can always shoot me a message if you want to hop on and shout at me, or I can even give you perms to my Discord. You can always just hop in there too. So, yeah.
Oh, right on. Cool.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Bye. Man, you guys aren't ready for the next season when that guy turns into a crazy BPD schizo. You'll never see it coming, okay?